The fluorescent lights of Elite Performance Center buzzed overhead as I stepped through the glass doors at 6:47 a.m. I timed my arrival carefully, early enough that the morning rush hadn't started, but late enough that my father would already be here for his daily workout routine. The familiar scent of rubber flooring and disinfectant filled my nostrils as I made my way past the empty reception desk. I was wearing my usual workout clothes, plain black leggings and a faded gray t-shirt from a 5K charity run I'd done 3 years ago. My hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. Nothing about my appearance suggested I was anything other than another member trying to squeeze in a morning workout before heading to whatever mundane job paid my bills. Which was exactly the image I'd cultivated for the past 4 years. Sophia, my father's voice cut through the quiet gym like a knife. What are you doing here? I turned to see David Rivera standing by the squat rack, his expression a mixture of surprise and displeasure. At 62, he still maintained the physique of someone half his age, broad shoulders, trim waist, the kind of body that came from decades of disciplined training. He'd been a competitive bodybuilder in his 30s, and he'd never quite let go of that identity. Good morning, Dad, I said evenly. I'm here to work out. This is a members-only facility. He set down his weight with a deliberate thud. You can't just walk in here. I have a membership. I pulled out my wallet, retrieved the keycard and held it up. The morning light caught the holographic Elite Performance logo. His eyes narrowed. Where did you get that? I applied for membership 6 months ago. They approved my application. I kept my voice neutral, matter of fact. My mother appeared from the women's locker room, her blonde hair perfectly styled even at this hour. Patricia Rivera had the kind of ageless beauty that came from excellent genes and even better cosmetic work. She was wearing a designer athletic set that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, or at least more than she thought my monthly grocery budget was. David, what's going on? She stopped short when she saw me. Sophia, what are you doing here? Apparently she has a membership, my father said, his tone making it clear what he thought of that development. My mother's perfectly microbladed eyebrows rose. How can you afford a membership here? The monthly fees are $1,500. I'd known this question would come. Elite Performance Center wasn't just a gym, it was a status symbol. The kind of place where CEOs networked on treadmills and surgeons discussed investment strategies between sets. My parents had been founding members when the facility opened 8 years ago, and they treated it like their personal country club. I manage my finances carefully, I said simply. Managing your finances, my father laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sophia, you work as a personal trainer at some budget gym across town. You drive a 12-year-old Honda. You live in a studio apartment in a building without a doorman. What finances are you managing? Every word he said was technically true. I did work as a personal trainer at FitZone, a no-frills gym in a working-class neighborhood. I did drive a 2013 Honda Civic with 140,000 miles on it. I did live in a 400-square-foot studio in a walk-up building where the elevator only worked half the time. What my father didn't know, what my entire family didn't know, was that I also owned a portfolio of 12 fitness facilities across the city, including the one we were standing in. My company Apex Fitness Holdings had acquired Elite Performance Center 14 months ago as part of a strategic expansion into the luxury wellness market. I prioritize what matters to me, I said, which was perhaps the most honest thing I'd said to my parents in years. My mother's expression shifted from surprise to something closer to pity. Honey, if you're struggling financially, you should have said something. Your father and I could help you find a better job. Something with benefits. Maybe an administrative position at one of the corporate gyms, where you could have a normal career path. I'm not struggling, Mom. Then how? She gestured around the pristine facility, at the top-of-the-line equipment, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. The juice bar with its organic smoothies and cold-pressed juices. Sophia, be realistic. This membership costs $18,000 a year. That's probably half your annual salary. It was closer to 1% of my annual salary, but I didn't correct her. I appreciate your concern, I said instead. But I'm fine. I'm just here to use the facilities I'm paying for. My father's jaw tightened. I recognized that expression. It was the same look he'd given me 4 years ago, when I'd told him I was dropping out of medical school to pursue personal training. The same look he'd worn at every family gathering since, whenever someone asked what his daughter was doing with her life. "This is inappropriate," he said finally. "This gym is where your mother and I come to relax, to network with our peers. Having you here, it's uncomfortable." "Uncomfortable for whom?" I asked quietly. "For everyone." My mother stepped closer, lowering her voice as if we were discussing something shameful. "Sweetheart, you have to understand. The people who come here, they're executives, entrepreneurs, professionals. When they see you, they're going to ask questions. They're going to wonder why David Rivera's daughter is working as a budget gym trainer instead of following in his footsteps." My father had built Rivera Pharmaceuticals from a small distribution company into a regional powerhouse. He'd sold it 5 years ago for $87 million and had spent his retirement serving on corporate boards and managing his investment portfolio. In his world, success was measured in exit valuations and stock options. In his world, I was a failure. "I'm not here to embarrass you," I said. "I'm here to exercise." "Then exercise somewhere else." My father's voice hardened. "There are hundreds of gyms in this city. You don't need to be at this one. I have a valid membership, which I'm sure you're struggling to afford." My mother's pity had shifted to determination. "Sophia, we're trying to help you. If you cancel this membership, that's $1,500 a month you could be putting towards something useful. A better apartment, a reliable car, maybe even going back to school." The implication was clear. Going back to medical school, finishing the degree I'd abandoned, becoming the doctor they'd always wanted me to be. "I don't want to cancel my membership," I said. My father's face flushed. "This is ridiculous. You're being stubborn and foolish, wasting money you don't have on some misguided attempt to prove. What? That you belong in spaces like this. You don't, Sophia. You made your choice when you dropped out of medical school to play fitness instructor. I'm a certified personal trainer with a degree in exercise physiology, which qualifies you to work at a gym, not to be a member at one like this." He gestured around the facility. "Do you know what the average net worth of members here is? Over $5 million. The locker room conversations are about private equity deals and vacation homes in Aspen. What are you going to contribute to those discussions? Tips on how to buy generic groceries." The words stung, but I'd learned over 4 years not to show it. I'd learned to let their assumptions about my life wash over me like water, to maintain the illusion I'd so carefully constructed. Because the truth was more complicated than they could imagine. 4 years ago, when I dropped out of medical school, I hadn't just been following some passion for fitness. I'd been following a business opportunity. My roommate's brother had been selling his small gym, a rundown facility in a working-class neighborhood, with outdated equipment and a dwindling membership base. He'd wanted $50,000 for it, and everyone told him it was worthless. But I'd seen something different. I'd seen a location with cheap rent, a loyal core membership, and massive potential for growth. I'd taken out a business loan, bought the gym, and spent the next 6 months transforming it. New equipment, updated facilities, targeted marketing to the surrounding neighborhoods, specialized programming for underserved demographics. Within a year, FitZone was profitable. Within 2 years, I'd opened a second location. By year 3, I had 5 facilities and had attracted the attention of private equity investors who saw what I was building. Apex Fitness Holdings now owned 12 facilities, ranging from budget gyms like FitZone to luxury wellness centers like Elite Performance. Our annual revenue was $47 million. My personal net worth, between my equity in the company and my real estate holdings, was approximately $18 million. But to my parents, I was still just a dropout who worked at a cheap gym. "I'm not having this conversation," I said, moving toward the locker room. "I'm going to change and work out." "Sophia," David let her go. My mother's voice had taken on a different tone, the one she used when she was strategizing. "We'll discuss this later." I knew what that meant. They'd discuss it without me, decide on a course of action, and present me with their solution as if it were the only reasonable option. It was how they'd always operated, even when I was a child. I changed quickly in the empty locker room, then headed to the cardio section on the second floor. The wall-to-wall windows offered a panoramic view of the city as the sun rose over the skyline. From up here, you could see the financial district, the sprawling parks, the river winding through downtown. You could also see 3 of my other facilities, though my parents didn't know that. I'd been on the treadmill for 20 minutes when I noticed the whispered conversation below. My parents were talking to someone at the reception desk, Marcus Bolton, the front desk supervisor. Even from a distance, I could read my father's body language, rigid shoulders, emphatic hand gestures, the posture of a man used to getting his way. I increased my speed, focusing on my breathing, trying to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. 10 minutes later, Marcus appeared on the second floor. He was in his mid-20s, perpetually nervous, the kind of employee who'd been hired more for his willingness to defer to powerful members than for any particular competence. Miss Rivera, he approached hesitantly. I'm sorry to interrupt your workout, but there's been a complaint. I slowed the treadmill to a walk. A complaint about what? Your membership. He wouldn't meet my eyes. There's a question about how it was processed. We need to verify some information. What kind of information? Your payment method, primarily. There's concern that there might have been some kind of error in the approval process. He was clearly reciting words someone else had fed him. We're going to need to put a temporary hold on your access while we sort this out. A temporary hold. I stepped off the treadmill. Marcus, I paid for my annual membership in full. I have the receipt. What exactly needs to be sorted out? His face reddened. I'm just following protocol. Miss Rivera, if you could please collect your things from the locker room. We'll contact you once we've resolved the issue. And if I refuse to leave, then he swallowed hard. Then we'll have to treat it as a trespassing situation. There it was. My parents had decided I didn't belong here, and they'd found a way to make that official. I see. I kept my voice level. And who exactly filed this complaint? I'm not at liberty to say. It was my father, wasn't it? Marcus's silence was answer enough. I could have ended this right then. I could have called Thomas Kim, the general manager who actually ran Elite Performance Center, and who knew exactly who I was. I could have shown Marcus the corporate structure, proved my ownership, watched his face go pale, as he realized he was trying to evict his actual boss. But something made me wait. Maybe it was curiosity about how far my parents would take this. Maybe it was exhaustion with the constant pretense. Maybe I just wanted to see what would happen when the truth finally came out. Fine, I said. I'll collect my things. I returned to the locker room, moved slowly, deliberately. By the time I emerged, a small crowd had gathered in the lobby. Morning regulars, early risers, the kind of people who treated their 7 a.m. workout as seriously as a board meeting. My parents stood near the reception desk with Marcus. My father's expression was set in grim determination, while my mother maintained a look of concerned sympathy, the face of a parent doing something difficult but necessary for their child's own good. Sophia, my father's voice carried across the lobby. Marcus has explained the situation. We think it's best if you leave quietly. Best for whom? I asked again. For everyone. My mother glanced at the watching members, clearly uncomfortable with the audience. This doesn't have to be dramatic, sweetheart. You can go. We'll help you find a gym that's more suitable for your budget, and we can all move on. I paid for my membership legally, I said. I have every right to be here. You paid for something you can't afford, my father countered. That's not the same thing. Marcus, if she won't leave voluntarily, I'm calling the police, Marcus said, already pulling out his phone. The lobby had gone quiet. I could feel the eyes on me, on the woman in the faded t-shirt and worn sneakers, being asked to leave a luxury gym by her own parents. I could imagine what they were thinking. Deadbeat daughter, financial irresponsibility, family drama played out in public. Let them think it. I was done managing perceptions. I stood in the center of the lobby and waited. The police arrived 12 minutes later. 2 officers, one older and one who couldn't have been out of the academy for more than a year. The older one, a woman with sergeant stripes, surveyed the scene with the weary expression of someone who'd seen every possible flavor of human nonsense. Someone want to explain what's going on? She asked. My father stepped forward immediately, extending his hand. Sergeant, thank you for coming. I'm David Rivera, and this is my wife Patricia. We're founding members of this facility, and we have a situation with our daughter. Your daughter? The sergeant looked at me, then back at him. She's been asked to leave the premises, but she's refusing, my mother explained. We don't want to make this difficult, but she's technically trespassing. This woman is trespassing at my private gym. My father told the sergeant, gesturing at me as if I were a stranger he'd found breaking in. The younger officer had pulled out a notepad. Ma'am, do you have membership here? Yes, I said calmly. I have an active annual membership that I paid for in full. She can't afford it, my father interrupted. She's living beyond her means, and it's creating an uncomfortable situation for the other members. The sergeant's eyebrow rose. Sir, if she has a paid membership, I'm not sure what you expect us to do. The membership was approved in error. Marcus chimed in, clearly trying to sound official. We're within our rights to revoke it. On what grounds? I asked. On the grounds that this is a private facility and we maintain certain standards, my father began. Certain standards? I felt my composure finally crack. You mean certain income requirements? Certain social status markers? Or do you just mean that you don't want your daughter, your failure of a daughter, working out in the same space where you network with your wealthy friends? My mother's face had gone pale. Sophia, please don't make a scene. I'm not making a scene, Mom. I'm standing here while you and Dad try to have me arrested for the crime of being an embarrassment to you. The lobby was dead silent now. Even the background music seemed to have stopped, though that might have just been my imagination. This is exactly what we're talking about, my father said, turning to the officers. She's being disruptive, inappropriate. I'm being honest, I corrected. For the first time in 4 years, I'm being completely honest with you. Officers, please, my mother said. Can you just escort her out? She's clearly not in a rational state of mind. I'm perfectly rational, Mom. I'm just done pretending. The sergeant looked between us, clearly trying to assess the situation. Mr. Rivera, does your daughter have a valid membership or not? The membership shouldn't have been approved, my father insisted. She doesn't meet the financial criteria. There are no financial criteria listed in the membership agreement, I said. I reviewed it carefully before I applied. The implied standards aren't legally enforceable, the sergeant said. Sir, if she has a paid membership and hasn't violated any facility rules, we can't arrest her for trespassing. My father's face was getting redder. Then I want to speak to the manager. The general manager. Someone needs to address this situation immediately. That would be me. Everyone turned. Thomas Kim had emerged from the administrative offices on the second floor and was descending the stairs. At 43, Thomas had spent 2 decades in luxury fitness management, and he moved with the calm authority of someone who'd handled every possible crisis a high-end gym could present. He was also the person I'd personally hired to run Elite Performance Center when Apex Fitness Holdings acquired it. I'm the general manager, Thomas said, reaching the lobby floor. Is there a problem? Yes, there's a problem, my father said. This woman, my daughter, has a membership here that never should have been approved. I want it revoked immediately. Thomas looked at me, and I saw the question in his eyes. I gave a slight shake of my head. Not yet. On what grounds? Thomas asked. On the grounds that she can't afford it, and her presence here is disruptive to other members, my father said. Has she been disruptive? Thomas asked. Has anyone witnessed her behaving inappropriately, using equipment improperly, violating facility rules? That's not the point. It is precisely the point, Mr. Rivera. We can't revoke someone's membership without cause, and financial status isn't a cause. Thomas pulled out a tablet, tapped a few times. According to our records, Ms. Rivera's membership was paid in full on January 15th of this year. $18,000. Wire transfer cleared the same day. My mother's sharp intake of breath was audible across the lobby. That's impossible, she said. Sophia, where did you get $18,000? From my bank account, I said simply. Your bank account? My father's disbelief was almost comedic. You expect us to believe you had $18,000 just sitting in your account, on a personal trainer's salary? I don't expect you to believe anything, Dad. You've made it clear what you think of me and my choices. Thomas was still looking at his tablet. There's actually a note here in the system. Miss Rivera's membership application was flagged for special processing. See? My father turned to the sergeant. Even their own system recognized something was wrong. It was flagged because the billing address matched one of our corporate accounts. Thomas continued, his voice carefully neutral, which required additional verification to ensure there wasn't a clerical error. The lobby seemed to hold its breath. What corporate account? my mother asked slowly. Thomas looked at me again. I met his eyes and nodded. The billing address matched the primary corporate account for Apex Fitness Holdings. Thomas said, the parent company that owns this facility. I watched comprehension dawn on my father's face like a sunrise. First confusion, then disbelief, then something that might have been horror. That's not possible, he said. I assure you it is. Thomas tapped his tablet again. Apex Fitness Holdings acquired Elite Performance Center in September of last year. The purchase price was $8.2 million. The company is owned and operated by Sofia Rivera. I finished. That would be me. The silence that followed was absolute. My mother's hand had gone to her throat. You own this gym, this one and 11 others, I said. FitZone, where I work as a trainer 3 days a week, was my first acquisition. I own it outright. The other facilities are held under the Apex umbrella, including this one. But, my father seemed to be struggling to form words. But you work at a budget gym. You drive an old car. You live in a studio apartment, because those were choices I made, I said. I work at FitZone because it's where I started, and because I believe in staying connected to the foundation of my business. I drive an old car because it's reliable and paid off, and I'd rather invest my money in growing the company than in displaying wealth. I live in a studio apartment because I don't need much space, and the building I live in is actually owned by one of my LLCs, which means I'm essentially living rent-free, while the other units generate income. This is insane, my mother whispered. Why would you keep this a secret? Because 4 years ago, when I told you I was dropping out of medical school to pursue fitness, you cut me off completely, I said. You told me I was making the biggest mistake of my life. You said I'd be back within a year begging for help. You made it clear that if I wanted to throw my life away on something as frivolous as personal training, I'd do it without your support. We were trying to protect you. You were trying to control me, I corrected. And when I wouldn't be controlled, you decided I wasn't worth your time. Every family gathering for 4 years, you've introduced me as your daughter who works at a gym, with that particular emphasis that lets everyone know how disappointed you are. You've made jokes about my career, suggested I'm living in poverty, implied that I'll eventually come to my senses and get a real job. We thought my father started. You thought I was a failure, I said. And I let you think it, because honestly it was easier than trying to convince you otherwise. But I'm done with that now. I'm done pretending to be less than I am to make you comfortable. Thomas cleared his throat. If I may, I have the corporate documentation here, if anyone would like to verify. That won't be necessary, the sergeant said. She looked at my parents with barely concealed disgust. Sir, ma'am, it appears your daughter is not only a member of this facility but actually owns it. I'm assuming you don't want to press any charges. My father seemed incapable of speech. No, my mother said faintly. No charges. Good. The sergeant turned to me. Miss Rivera, I apologize for the inconvenience. You have every right to be here. Thank you, Sergeant. As the officers left, the lobby remained frozen. The other members were still watching, but the expressions had changed. Where before there had been curiosity and perhaps some schadenfreude at watching a family drama unfold, now there was something closer to shock. Thomas stepped closer to me, lowering his voice. Do you want me to? No, I said quietly. I'll handle it. He nodded and retreated to his office, leaving me alone with my parents in the middle of the lobby. Sophia, my mother finally said. I don't understand. If you've been this successful, why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? I asked. If I'd come to you a year ago, or 2 years ago, and said I owned multiple gyms and was worth millions of dollars, would you have believed me, or would you have assumed I was delusional or lying? Neither of them answered. The truth is, I built this without you because I had to, I continued. You made it clear that unless I followed your path, unless I became the doctor you wanted me to be, I wasn't worth your support or respect. So I found my own path. I built my own success, and I did it while you treated me like a charity case. We didn't know, my father said, but his voice had lost all its authority. You didn't want to know, I corrected. You didn't ask about my life, my work, my goals. You assumed you knew everything you needed to know based on your own prejudices about what constitutes success. We made a mistake, my mother said. Sophia, we made a terrible mistake. Please let us. Let you what? Apologize. Pretend the last 4 years didn't happen. I shook my head. I'm not interested in pretending anymore, Mom. About anything. Then what do you want? My father asked. It was a good question. What did I want? I looked around the lobby of Elite Performance Center at the gleaming equipment, the soaring ceilings, the view of the city skyline. This facility represented everything my parents valued: luxury, exclusivity, status. And I owned it along with 11 others that represented different values: accessibility, community, health for everyone regardless of income. I want you to understand that your definition of success isn't the only one that matters, I said finally. I want you to recognize that I built something meaningful, even if it doesn't look like what you imagined for me. And I want you to decide whether you can accept me as I actually am, not as who you wished I'd become. Of course we can, my mother said immediately. Sophia, you're our daughter, then start treating me like it. I picked up my gym bag. I'm going to finish my workout now. You can stay or leave, that's up to you. But if you stay knowing that this is my facility, my business, my success, not something to be ashamed of or explained away. I walked past them toward the stairs, my heart pounding but my steps steady. Sophia, wait, my father called. I paused, turned back. He looked older somehow, diminished. I owe you an apology. A real one. Okay. I spent 4 years thinking you'd thrown your life away, he said slowly. I was so convinced that my path was the right path, the only path, that I couldn't see what you were building. And that's on me, that's my failure, not yours. It wasn't everything I needed to hear, but it was a start. Thank you, I said. Can we? My mother looked uncertain, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen her. Can we start over, really get to know what you've built? Maybe, I said. But it has to be real, Mom. No more assumptions, no more dismissiveness. If you want to be part of my life, you have to actually be interested in my life. We are, she said. We will be, I promise. I nodded slowly. Okay, then we can try. I continued up the stairs to finish my workout. Behind me I could hear the whispered conversations resuming in the lobby, the speculation and surprise. By tomorrow everyone in their social circle would know. David Rivera's daughter, the one they'd pitied as a failed medical student working at a budget gym, actually owned a multi-million-dollar fitness empire. Let them talk. I was done managing other people's perceptions of my success. An hour later, as I was cooling down on a stationary bike, Thomas appeared beside me. How are you doing? He asked quietly. Honestly, I'm not sure yet. I kept pedaling, watching my heart rate slowly decrease on the monitor. It's strange, having it all out in the open after so long. For what it's worth, I think you handled it perfectly. Thomas smiled slightly, though I have to admit, when Marcus called me in a panic saying you were being thrown out, I nearly gave away the whole thing immediately. I'm glad you didn't. I needed to see how far they'd take it. And now we see if they meant what they said about starting over. I slowed the bike to a stop. How's everything else? Any issues with the Carson Street location? Just like that, we shifted into business mode, discussing occupancy rates and equipment maintenance and marketing strategies. This was the part of my life my parents had never seen. The strategic thinking, the financial planning, the careful growth of a business built on understanding what people needed and finding ways to provide it. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Your father and I would like to take you to dinner tomorrow night. Just the three of us. We have a lot to learn about what you've built, and we'd like to start. If you're willing. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. Okay, but we're going to the diner near Fit Zone. I want you to see where this all started. Her response came quickly. We'll be there. And Sophia, I'm proud of you. I should have said that 4 years ago. I put my phone away and finished my cool down. Through the windows, the city stretched out in all directions, including the neighborhoods where my other facilities stood, serving communities my parents had probably never even visited. I'd built an empire they'd never suspected, created success on my own terms, proven that their path wasn't the only path. And I'd done it all while they treated me like a failure. The irony wasn't lost on me. But as I gathered my things and headed for the locker room, passing members who now looked at me with new awareness, I realized something important. I hadn't built this business to prove them wrong. I'd built it because I believed in it, because I saw a need and found a way to fill it, because I genuinely loved the work of helping people transform their relationship with fitness and health. Their approval or disapproval hadn't changed that fundamental truth. And maybe that was the real success, not the net worth or the facilities, or even the vindication of being proven right. The real success was building something meaningful regardless of whether anyone else recognized its value. I emerged from Elite Performance Center into the bright morning sun, my workout complete, my secret revealed, my relationship with my parents uncertain, but potentially repairable. Tomorrow I'd go back to training clients at FitZone, the same way I had every week for 4 years. I'd work with people who couldn't afford Elite Performance Center's fees, who needed encouragement and expertise, and someone who believed in their potential. Because that's what I'd built this business to do, and no amount of my parents' approval or disapproval would change that.